Hello again. Welcome to another episode of Not My Canon. It is July 4th. Happy July 4th. Hoorah. So today, so last time we did the Clone Troopers, the Phase 2s, I spoke with the person who actually painted the last ones very graciously, and he was very gracious to me and explained how his process in doing it, because I didn't like how my stuff turned out. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a pause on that, and we're going to do something different. So as you can probably tell, we are doing Asajj Ventress today. We're going to probably do it in a two-part video, and yeah, so what we're going to do today is I looked at some different schemes and stuff like that, and I kind of adjusted some things that I liked based on the colors that I had. So we will do a purple base for the clothing. We have black, we have Balthazaars Gold, which I'm very excited to use. I really like this color because it's a strange color, I like it. Then we have gray and red and ochre and metallic silver and white. We're just gonna do a bunch of different things. So yeah, I'm excited, and we'll start. We're gonna start with purple because it's the majority of the model. So we'll just start and kind of paint the whole outfit thing. This is the first time I think I have used this paint, so it's different than what I've normally said about Citadels, by them being already bad by the time I open them, because, well, I'm sure by tomorrow it'll be dried out, but whatever. So we got this here. I'm excited. Yeah, so we're gonna I wanted to continue kind of what I was talking about last time, and we'll wade into some not fun things, and by that I mean some controversial takes. It was funny because my last video on YouTube, the Clone Trooper one, the AI or whatever had read that like that I had mentioned James Gunn, so that's like on the description of the video, that topics mentioned in this, excuse me, topics mentioned in this video, and James Gunn was the topic, which I find hilarious. So that should garner some nice reactions when people eventually watch it. So kind of to finish off the topic that I was talking about, and kind of wade into some other things. So my whole point in that whole rant that I went on is this idea that you found a kind of formula, unfortunately, that works because it's cheap to make. The majority of the movie's action anyway, and we've moved past the whole need for deep and meaningful dialogue, and then in addition to the dialogue being cheaped, or chinsing out on dialogue, now we have like character development goes along with that, because dialogue is directly connected to character development and scene development. So now that's not a hard and fast thing, because there's a lot of scenes that are done in silence, right? So that someone who writes those things, don't take that for I'm not discounting one by including the other. But anyway, the reason why in the beginning of the video that I didn't get to, like I didn't go back to, was the whole, I brought up that this goes back to the Dark Knight and Iron Man 1. And the reason why that is the case is because 4 years after the Dark Knight Rises came out. Now, I know that the Dark Knight Rises is a... Oh, interesting. I just realized that I didn't repaint the model black. That's okay. That's okay. We're just going to go a little bit, haywire with this one, I guess. So I know that movie has garnered a lot of criticism. It's very polarizing. People love that movie or they hate it. I personally love it, but I love it because I think it's misunderstood. It's my favorite of the three, even though I think it's my favorite, but I do not think that it being my favorite designates that it's the best of the three. I do think that Dark Knight is objectively the best. I would also argue that potentially Batman Begins is better than Dark Knight Rises. I think Batman Begins is an amazing origin movie. That it's probably the best origin movie out there. So that's just my personal take. I think it's very Blade Runner-esque, which was its point. It's just so underrated and so brilliantly executed that I feel like we just miss out. Like, we're so obsessed with the second one, which is a fair point, but you know, we miss out on the beauty of that first one. I also disagree with the idea that Gotham changed, the format of Gotham changed in the second one. I disagree with it, not from a basic standpoint, but from a principle standpoint, in the sense that it did change, but that's because the setting it took place in changed. So Batman Begins was mostly done in Arkham. So, and in certain like very seedy areas of like underbelly Gotham, whereas Dark Knight was more, for many different reasons, very kind of like high rise and those sorts of things. So then, oh, this is looking pretty good. So then, my point is that regardless of what criticism that you levy against Dark Knight Rises, from a like, oh, a storytelling standpoint, or well, mostly a storytelling standpoint, I'll say. Those things we can have a discussion about. What really, what I'm trying to kind of point out with the comparison to, I'm trying to figure this out here, how I want to do this. I like that. So I'm painted her whole sort of dress purple, and I'm doing the upper part, but I'm trying to decide how I want to do this, because I think I'm just going to stick with the upper part being, like the bra area being purple, and then I'll do the straps a different color. I think that's how I'm going to do it. And then I'll do probably the wraparound, actually. I'll do that as well. However, that wasn't a main point of criticism. So Dark Knight Rises came out in 2012, and one of the main, the counterpart to that, that came out was Avengers 1. So, okay, I have so much to say about this, so we'll get to it. But I'm going to pause. I'm going to take a photo of this. Okay, so I did purple. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to, since I did purple, I kind of want to make well, I definitely want to do that. I think I'll do gray for the body right now. So Avengers 1 comes out in 2012, and Avengers 1 doesn't perfect the quippy attitude toward dialogue, but it starts it. Or it really, or it puts it in a bigger perspective, because it's a Avengers movie. It's not just like, oh, it's Iron Man, 1, or, which honestly, Iron Man 1 started kind of the quippy behavior, but not in a bad way, and more just like, oh, this is a specific character who does this. Like Jeff Bridges playing the bad guy. I mean, it's just like Obadiah is just so brilliant, and his dialogue is incredible. But so when you look at the actual reviews for Dark Knight Rises, even from critics, one of the things was that it was not humorous enough, that it was too dark, and it's a strange thing to me, because you came, this is the same franchise that gave you Dark Knight, which when it was rated, this is strange. Oh, right, I forgot about this. Okay, I have to do this specifically. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint her skin tone gray, but I have to be careful because a lot of her, like, it's really only her fingers. It's not even her arm fully. I need to get rid of some of this. It's not even her arm fully because a lot of that is wrapped up. So I have to figure out how I want to paint that. But anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is it's a 4-year shift from a franchise that gave you a film that was rated for menace, and it was regarded as the greatest superhero movie of all time. So to me, that's not a statement, to me, that's not an indictment personally on the movie itself. It's more of society's willingness to accept that movie because of what else is out there. And this goes to my whole theory about just because you like something doesn't mean it's good and the other way around. And because I think that's something that especially consumers have a hard time wrapping their head around. But anyway, so then the problem is that Avengers 1, while I like half of that movie, again, going back to what I said before about good dialogue and you know, interesting monologues and interesting character developments and great acting as well. The problem is that that movie kind of set up a train wreck that destroyed Snyder's universe, and then, you know, eventually tanked Marvel, and then eventually destroyed Star Wars. Because when you create this formula to just get people in seats but not have them retain anything that you've made, there's really nothing, like, there's no substance to what you're doing. So why are we doing it, first of all? So that's, like, in a very long kind of, very long-winded way, that's why Supergirl doesn't do well. It's not because there isn't talent behind the work, right? It's like, there's talent behind it. Just because I think James Gunn is a bad writer doesn't mean I think he's a bad director, in the sense that directing is not just, like, yes, there's fulfilling the vision. Now, do I think the vision was flawed from the very beginning? Do I think all of his visions are flawed from the very beginning? Yeah, most of them. But directing also is like your relationship with your actors, and can you get your actors to do the thing that you're asking them to do? And he does that. I don't like the things he's asking them to do, but objectively he has his vision and he's able to communicate, not only communicate to his actors what he wants to do or what he wants them to do, but also they want to work with him. It's the same reason why I don't like Shyamalan. I don't like J.J. Abrams. I don't like what's her name, Greta Gerwig. I think they're all terrible. But specifically from a writing perspective, not necessarily from a directing perspective, because we have to be objective about what is their vision. Now, their vision is not mine, which is fine. And is the director happy with the result of what they asked the actors to do? And they are, which means for their project, for their work, they're a great director. The actors want to listen, so on and so forth. So I think it's really important that when you're identifying art and analyzing it and trying to figure out, like, the value of something and those sorts of things, it's really important to understand, again, going back to the whole board game geek thing, is like, it's really important that you know what you're trying to analyze and what you're trying to get out of that analyzation. Otherwise, you just become a person who is like, well, I just hate it because I hate it. And you're not able to articulate your viewpoint or able to separate how you feel about something, and then you just become kind of a gatekeeper. People like there's some people who like Supergirl. There's some people who like Guardians of the Galaxy too. It doesn't make any sense to me, but if you like it, that's fine. But also, don't sit there and go, it's good, and not able to tell me why. And then the same thing for people who say things are bad. If you don't know why, then I don't know how else to help you. I'm trying to think of how I want to do this here. Well, let me paint the back anyway. So, what was I going to say? So yeah, that's why those movies are not good. So oh yeah, so let's just talk about the Snyder stuff for a second. So what ended up happening was that because Marvel had kind of gone in the direction that they did, setting up this sort of like franchise level, which is fine. I mean, do your thing, man. But it did, like, it kind of like torpedoed Snyder's vision, because Snyder, like, here's the thing. Again, love it or hate it, let's address what he's trying to do. Snyder has to be viewed less from a Marvel perspective and more from a Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings perspective. And what I mean by that is, if you watch the Snyder cut of Justice League, especially the very beginning of it, like probably the first 45 minutes of it or so, it's very Fellowship of the Ring. It's very fantasy heavy. It's very like lore building and world building and all those sorts of things, which I really love, and I think Snyder does a great job of that. But also, I think the problem, it's not a problem with DC, it's just a problem with, like, again, this whole thing about Marvel kind of like creating the precedents for how these things kind of behave and exist and are viewed, is we want all the, and I think that this is the worst part of kind of what Marvel did. We want all the benefits of hope, and we want all the benefits of hope and justice and redemption without any of the reasons of how we got there and why we need them. And that's part of the issue. So I remember when the Superman trailer came out, the new one, there was this, I'm going to pause for a second. Okay, so I just had to look at the image again because some of the stuff is tiny, so I have to, I'm going to redo some purple and gray, and then I have to figure out how exactly I want to do this, because I don't really like the ties being colored that way. Well, anyway, all right, I'll figure it out. Okay, so anyway, the Snyder stuff. So I think the Snyder stuff is really good. There's a lot of people who don't, but the problem is that stuff was sort of shafted, in the end, because it wasn't. Here's the thing. Again, I'll just use the same example that I keep using about, like, understanding. Here's the thing. There's the whole theory when you're making, whatever it is, me painting or making a movie or, whatever it ends up being. There's that theory of knowing your audience. Every investor always asks the question of knowing your audience. Now, I think it's really important to know that question, to answer that question. But the problem is, this is my own personal opinion, the problem is I think that question is asked with a misunderstanding of why we're asking that question, especially from a producer's perspective. Again, I'm not trying to make an excuse of just like, oh, every independent film should just get whatever money they are, because, whatever money they want because it's this and that. Like, I have a genuine reason for this. I think that the reason you ask that question is, well, the reason producers ask that question is because they're asking who's going to watch this. But the problem is when you start from that viewpoint, it's a fine viewpoint to start from. However, the problem ends up being that what you end up asking is, how do we adjust this project, whatever the project is, to be more accessible to a larger audience, which is the point that I'm going to try to get to in this rant, but not for the reasons that they're saying. So the reason that I agree with that viewpoint, or the viewpoint that I would, or the version of that I would take, is what you have to understand is that when you're creating something, you have an artistic vision. You have a thing that you want to make. But what you have to do is I don't think, let me put it this way. I don't think the question should be, who is our audience? It's, what are we doing? What are we asking the audience to do? And how do we respect them enough to make it a little bit more palatable for them, right? So for example, one of the films that I did, well, both of them really, they're very long. They're just shy of 2 hours. And they have this, like, there's this whole thing where they're very, they're very, like Tarkovsky and Bergman and that sort of thing, where there's no dialogue really, or there's no dialogue. There's a lot of monologues, but no dialogue. And you're asking the audience to sit with the characters for a long period of time to really, like, delve into things. I'm going to take a photo now. All right, we're going to go back to purple for a second. And we're going to paint the rest of it. You have to understand what you're asking the audience to do and how difficult some of it might be. And then what you say is, okay, if out of all the things I want to keep, that's what I want to keep. Now, what can I do within that? Which I think is the difference, because there's a lot of, like, compromise that is, oh man, just painted it with a gray. I hate it when that happens. Where you, like, have a really good thing and then you just paint right over it for no reason. How do I respect the audience enough to know what I'm asking them to do, and how can I make it a little bit easier on them? So for me, it was both of those films had to look visually gorgeous, like the location. Like so our big thing was the location. So what we did was we went and we shot in these places that allowed the film to breathe a lot more. And even though, like, we're asking the audience to sit in these places with these characters for long periods of time, and what ends up happening is the audience wants to sit in it because it's visually beautiful. It's a place that they would wish to be, that they think is, really lovely, and, whatever it is. So it's a way of saying, okay, I'm asking you to sit with me here. So how do I make it easier for you to do that? How do I make it more palatable for you to do that, right? And so that's really the question. The problem is that when we get to the Snyder stuff, is we're not asking those questions. We're asking, how do I mitigate? Like, that's what the problem with the Snyder movies is that they were corporately mitigated and destroyed in order to be more like Marvel. But it's like, and this is what I'm saying about the difference between how do I respect my audience versus who do I want my audience to be? Because really when we ask the question of who is your audience, the production company or the distribution company, whoever's fronting the money, is really saying, what movie can we make to get the largest demographic? Which is fine in theory if you want to make a movie like that, but you're not. Like, if you want to fund a movie like that, then fund a movie like that. But here's where the Snyder thing is a real travesty. And again, there's going to be people who are like, oh, it's a Snyder bot, or these sorts of things. And whatever, that's fine. You can say that. That's a fair assessment, or what, do whatever you want. But here's the question, though. Those corporations, Warner Brothers, did not respect the question of who is my audience. Because if they did that, the movies wouldn't have turned out the way they did. The bad versions of those movies, where they were edited down or whatever and critiqued in the way that they were. Because the DC people wanted You know what it's kind of like? It's kind of like Battlefield player, or like the video game Battlefield, like the whole thing where Call of Duty is so bad that all the Call of Duty people went over to Battlefield 6, or whatever number it is right now. I think it's 6. Is before the whole travesty happened with them. But you have that, and it's like, man, there's a bug in here. Where they're like, what was I saying? Man, I totally lost my train of thought. Oh, so then the Call of Duty players are complaining about how the game isn't like Call of Duty. And it's like, then go back and play a version of that game that you like. I'm confused as to why this is even a conversation. It's the same thing with DC. It's like, so the corporation's like, well, we want to be more like Marvel. Okay, well, then go make a Marvel thing then. Like, go make something that's that. Don't try to shoehorn a version of DC that isn't there. DC is supposed to be darker. It's supposed to be, these other things. And also, I think there's a level where there were decisions made in the making of those movies that people, unfortunately, just jumped on kind of a bandwagon with, where they're like, oh, this doesn't make any sense and it's stupid. So, like, for example, Man of Steel. I don't remember the father's name, but like one of the points of contention is like the way the father died. It's like, it's a stupid death. And it's like, so my theory about that is, yes, it is a stupid death, and it's purposefully a stupid death. Because, and the reason I say that is because yeah, I'm definitely going to paint another set of purple, at least one more coat. So the reason I say that is because if you watch the movie up to the point that he dies, and you pay attention to the dialogue that the father is giving Clark in the different instances in which Clark wants to be helpful and those sorts of things, and the father's like, well, you can't be because of this and that. The father's biggest flaw is that he doesn't trust that the world can handle who Clark is. And what I love about that portion of the character is we have this natural inclination, as moviegoers, as humans, to trust our authority figures without questioning anything. And because we want a level of safety, and that should come especially from parents and things like that. However, that's not always the case. Now, it's not a meaning to tear down institutions or anything like that, but it's just more of an ability to think critically and to trust things a little bit more. Now, when things aren't good, things aren't good. But when things are, they are. And my point with that is, the father was wrong in the whole thing with it. And so the reason that, oh man, this did not turn out the way I wanted to. I feel like I keep saying that about this model. It's weird because I really like the way this model is turning out, and then there's just certain things that I just can't stand. Not that I'm going to change it, but more just like I wish. It's just me being dumb, honestly. Like I just don't like that the brighter colors. I need to take like more time with it. I'm just impatient. That's really it. That's really the whole thing. Because I like the way these colors kind of line up and everything, but it's just annoying. Anyway, oh, I did this wrong again. I didn't take a whatever. So the point of the death is to showcase that there was actually no need for him to have to sacrifice himself at all. And it's supposed to feel hollow. It's supposed to feel like a waste, because it is. Because we want every death in a movie like that to be like Uncle Ben, where Peter is the one who's in the wrong. He should have listened to him. If he had listened to him, it would have gone better. He would still be alive, and these sorts of things. But it's just not the way that it's not the way it turns out all the time. And that's kind of the beauty of that death, where it is because of that that when Clark finally does have the ability to, listen to his, not real father, but, his natural father about those things, he does. Because that father has more trust in the response that, Earth will have, the people of Earth will have to Clark's abilities and his presence than his own earthly father did. And that's supposed to, in a human way, mimic, Christ on earth and his, his heavenly father and his earthly father. Because it's interesting, because after the birth of Jesus, Joseph is never mentioned again. I don't think he is. He might be mentioned once, but as far as I know, he's never mentioned again. And it's not to say somehow that Joseph was this evil father or anything like that, but you know what, he was mentioned, not by name, I don't think, but more so by association, because of when Jesus went to the temple when he was 12, and that his parents took him, right? But the point that I'm trying to make is one that's like, there is that difference. There is that, like, we are supposed to feel hollow. And again, that's kind of what the whole point is with why I think Marvel's writing plummeted, because we didn't want people to feel uncomfortable in order to get them to think. And that sometimes things are written in such a way that they feel like almost like a waste of your time. Not a bad waste of your time, but more like, we want different things for different people. We want characters to be more so the way we want to be, rather than who we actually are. This is why I think Frodo in Lord of the Rings is so powerful as a character, the way Jackson presented it specifically, but it's even in the book, because this is why everybody hates Frodo but loves Sam, right? Everybody loves Sam because Sam is who we all assume we are, or if we're at least a little more self-aware, of not who we are, but who we would like to be. And the reason we all hate Frodo is because Frodo is who we actually are. And there's a lot of hurt in that. There's a lot of things you have to look at. We're not always going to treat people with the grace that we want to treat them with. We're not always going to be strong in the face of, whatever hardship that we have. But we all want to be Sam. It's kind of like the film, The Pianist by Roman Polanski with Adrian Brody. Like, one of the beauties of that film is, we always watch a film like that, like a World War II film, and we think, oh, like if it was me, I would have saved so many people from the Holocaust, so many Jews, so many gypsies, so many, whatever. I would have saved them all. And it's like, would you have though? Like, I'm curious, because I've had this conversation with people before, and it seems to affect, I think, mostly people who are oldest siblings, of which I am of that ilk. And that movie was very painful for me to get through until I understood what it was doing. We watched that movie, and he never does sacrifice himself for someone else. And it's a very interesting thing, because again, we walk into all of those instances going, no, if it was me, I would sacrifice. I would be Schindler, right? That's how I would be. And it's like, but you wouldn't though. You really wouldn't, and that's okay. That's really okay. It's not a big deal.